Greetings, fellow Gorehounds, and welcome back to a Blood Splattered vlog. I'm the Horror Guru.
And I'm Count Jackula.
And today we're going to talk about Heretic from writer-directors Scott Beck and Bryan Young. This film is about two Mormon missionaries who attempt to convert an academic by the name of Mr. Reed inside his home one evening when the academic decides to lock them inside and force them to engage in a theological discussion.
Yeah.
As it were. That's the beginning of the movie. We'll talk more about the rest of the movie in the spoiler section, but that's how this movie starts. This movie is great.
Yes, it's an A24 movie through and through.
100%. It is a meditation on, not really meditation, it's more of a dissertation on religion and faith, but it does come to conclusions on them by the end of the movie. And both of those things are represented by different characters in this movie.
Yeah.
The performances in this movie are phenomenal. And the movie is carried by them because the first half of the movie is basically a stage play.
Yeah.
Where you're watching three characters interact and constantly, I gain the power in this conversation. Now I gain the power in this conversation. Right. And there's a back and forth until you eventually reach the middle portion of the movie where one character reclaims the power for most of the movie until the end.
Yeah. And Hugh Grant is amazing.
He is phenomenal. This recent turn of him playing villains.
Yeah.
This is probably the most overtly villainous character he's played.
Yeah, because unlike some of the other ones he's played, he is a mastermind.
He's not comic relief.
No.
He's funny.
No. Yeah.
And he's scary. But most importantly, he's also right.
Yeah.
About a lot of things he says, which makes him even scarier.
Yeah, because you're wondering, where's he going with this?
Yep. And we'll talk about that in the spoiler section, because I don't want to give away, like, the ultimate conclusion he comes to in his little spiel.
Yeah, because he says, I have found the one true religion.
Yep. And the rest of the movie is him proving that to not only the characters, but the audience.
The audience, yeah.
Two mixed results, depending upon the character. We'll talk more about that in the spoiler section. Characters have vastly different fates over the course of this movie.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff we can talk about is the theological discussions in this movie, talking about the various faiths and denominations of Christianity and expanding that to, like, various mythologies and their connections.
Board games, popular music, marketing, capitalism. That stuff is the first half of the movie, and it's the most engaging part of the movie. Yeah, because you're waiting for him to do something because you know he's gonna do something, but they drag it out.
Yeah.
And you know something's gonna happen at any moment. You just aren't entirely sure what. And it's really well written that way.
That's the thing that makes the movie go from good to great.
Yeah.
Is that you can't actually predict what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
You can predict maybe the next step, but the next three steps are going to be blurry to you.
Yes.
You know?
It's really hard to guess what his ultimate conclusion is.
And where you eventually end up makes a lot of sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense.
And in fact, it makes the movie infinitely rewatchable because when you go back to the beginning of the movie, because I've seen this multiple times at this point, the beginning of the movie completely sets up everything that happens at the end.
Yes.
There's things that he's doing throughout the movie that leads to his conclusion without you realizing that's what he's doing.
Yeah, touches on the nature of belief.
The best way I can describe this movie, imagine if you take a Saw movie, right? But Jigsaw, in this version of Saw, is not interested in torturing people or putting them in traps. He's instead interested in lecturing people on his thesis on religion.
Yeah.
That's what this movie kind of is.
His whole goal is to prove his point to you.
Yeah. His long in-person video essay.
Yes.
On the subject matter. Yeah. And you're going to watch it whether you want to or not. And Hugh Grant is great in this role because he is simultaneously the kind of sleazy academic that is annoying as all fuck, but because he's Hugh Grant, he's also infinitely charming.
Yes.
And captivating when he speaks. You're mesmerized by his words, but you're also very aware that this guy is a smug prick.
Oh, yeah. And one of the things that, like,
kind of works is that you're never sure why he is motivated to do this.
Yes, that's a big question throughout the movie. Why is he doing what he's doing?
Yeah.
And honestly, the movie doesn't directly answer that. You can infer it by the end.
Yeah, you can make a lot of inferences, but
there's never a point where he stands in front of a character and goes, "This is why I am the way that I am."
Yeah. He's an Iago.
No.
Like, why have you done this? Iago says nothing.
But the one thing that is clear is that throughout the movie, he is definitely taking characters on a journey that on some level he feels like he went through himself to a certain extent.
To a certain point.
There's a limit.
Yeah.
There's a limit to that.
One of the things that we can infer about why he's doing this, he's trying to find the differences between certain people because he is running this like an experiment.
Yeah. Yep. Academic through and through.
Yeah.
There is a bit of an experiment. But what's interesting is when you get to the end of the movie, you find out there was always an inevitable end.
Yeah, there's an inevitable end.
That he planned from the get-go.
Yes.
Heretic is a must-see. This movie's currently available on streaming. It was in theaters. Now it's available on various streaming platforms to rent or buy. I highly recommend you rent or buy this movie because this movie is one of the best horror movies of the year. Just flat out.
Yeah.
And that's even though a good half of this movie is just talking heads.
Yes. Yeah. The writing in the movie is excellent.
That being said, make no mistake, the cinematography in this movie is also very subtly brilliant too. And we'll talk more about that in the spoiler section because a lot of my favorite shots in this movie are incredibly spoilery. With that said, my fellow Gorehounds, let us move on to the spoiler section so we can talk about what lurks underneath this thesis in Heretic. This movie would make an interesting companion piece with the original Speak No Evil. Because at the end of the movie, there's a similar kind of, why did you let me do this?
Yeah.
Kind of conclusion.
Yeah.
I was manipulating you and steering you the entire movie, with the exception of one moment.
Yeah.
You largely fell right into my hands.
Yeah, exactly.
To a certain extent, that's not even true, because while he does say basically that, there's two Mormons in this movie. There is Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton. The dark-haired one, Sister Barnes, challenges him the entire time, which is why she gets her throat cut at a certain point.
Yeah.
It's like, you're screwing with my experiment.
Yeah. So
even though she is a natural conclusion of one version of this experiment, right?
Yeah. But you get the feeling like, oh, he's gotten everything he needs to get out of her.
But the other part of it is the actual revelation at the end of this movie is the one true religion is control. That's the connection between the organized religions, between capitalism, between all of the various mythologies throughout history. These were often stories or tools used to control people in some way, whether it is to control their behavior or to control their thinking. Most of the time, both.
Yep. And the board game that he uses in his analogy is Monopoly.
Now, fun fact about Monopoly. Monopoly was actually stolen from an original game called the Landlord's Game.
Yep.
Which was actually a game designed to turn people against landlords, but then was repackaged and remarketed as a yay capitalism game.
Yeah.
That game, Landlord's Game, is actually referenced in this movie. They don't really talk about the history of why that game was made, but he does talk about Monopoly is an iteration of the Landlord's Game, and then talks about the various iterations of Monopoly.
Yeah.
The Bob Ross Monopoly, Star Wars Monopoly, yada, yada.
Yeah, and he relates these to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
Yeah, the original monotheistic religion shifted over time to this other one called Christianity. And then a completely new offshoot happens over here that's not really as connected, but has a lot of similar traits. And then also connects that to Mormonism, an offshoot of Christianity that was born in America. By Joseph Smith. Then takes that and connects that to the various influences from mythology. People like Dionysus, how
Apollonius of Tyana.
Yes, exactly. The god Ra. All these various figures and how they're all iterations of each other. And one of the things he talks about is why is Christianity more popular? Because it markets itself better. Because Christianity goes out of its way to convert people, to send people door to door.
Yeah.
Missionaries existed before Mormonism.
Yeah.
One of the primary ways any of these religions spreads is by finding people that are down on their luck.
people that are poor, people that are starving, suffering in some way.
It doesn't state this. This is a thread that you have to follow through the symbolism, which in itself is part of the point of the movie, which is that there is a difference between religion and faith.
Yes, it's made clear through these characters.
Yeah.
He ultimately, by the end of this movie, represents all these religions.
Yeah.
He has set up a system that is going to manipulate each of these characters down the path he wants them to go.
Yeah.
To reach the conclusion he wants them to reach. And the entire time, they're given the illusion of choice.
Yeah.
2 doors that have different labels, but go to the same
Yeah, they go
hallway.
to the exact same place. He even does the, like, creating a miracles using stage magic.
Yeah. He tries to, like, manipulate a miracle in order to try to convert them. But all of this is him manipulating and controlling them from the get-go, using a lot of tactics of religion. Some forceful, some just tricks of the mind.
Yeah.
And he is ultimately taken these 2 people who came to convert him and is converting them. And one of them dies because she refuses to be converted.
Killing the heretic is another method of control.
Yes, she is the witch that needs to be burned.
Yes.
Ultimately, the character who actually survives and makes it out of this whole thing is a character who latches on to their faith, even while it's shaken in the face of this movie.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, she's ultimately rewarded by the end with a miracle.
Yeah.
Where the character who was slain earlier in the movie saves her with one last gasp of life.
Yeah.
Ultimately, a miracle did happen, but it happened to the person who maintained their faith throughout this entire
and
process.
this allows her to escape.
This is a movie that's highly critical of organized religion, but is very celebratory of faith itself.
Yeah, I would have changed just one thing. So as Hugh Grant's character is dying, I would have had him say something like, "I knew it was real." Or like, "I knew you could do it."
That would have been great.
Know? Just like his whole plan was to find the person that could fucking break through this thing and find the separation between religion and faith.
Oh man, that would have been great. But one thing I love is that the character doesn't survive this by being unchanged the whole time.
No.
She doesn't enter the same person. She very much exits a different person. A great moment of that growth is one of my favorite exchanges in the whole movie. He tells her, as they both look like they're dying, to pray for him. She mentions that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
There was a whole experiment they did on praying, and the conclusion it drew was that it didn't make a difference. But she does it anyway because she thinks it's beautiful if people are thinking about other people and wishing well-being for other people.
There it is. That's the difference between religion and faith.
That was a great point. And I say that as someone who hates the thoughts and prayers bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
But that was actually a very good point. One rebuttal to that would be is that it can't just stop with praying.
No. It's a fine thing to do if there's nothing else you can do.
Exactly. Let me lay out a scenario. Someone is shot in front of you.
Right.
The way it plays out on like social media and in the media is, oh, someone was shot, thoughts and prayers for them. You should be calling an ambulance.
Yeah.
Getting them on the ambulance. And once they're in the hospital and the doctors are fucking operating them or whatever, that's when you pray.
Yeah. That's the moment where faith is supposed to carry you across the threshold.
The prayer should not be the beginning. It should be the end.
Yeah. It's your last option.
Yeah.
It's the last thing you can do.
Once you've exhausted all other options and you have to leave it in the hands of God.
Yeah.
That never comes up in the movie, but in the situation in which she is praying, that is what basically happened.
Yeah.
She has exhausted every other option. She has tried to escape only to realize the entire fucking house is a labyrinth that leads right back to where she started. So there is no way out. That does play out in the context of the movie. She has done everything she can up to this point.
Yeah, up to this point. And
the only thing that can save her is a miracle.
Which happens.
Yeah. It's a great movie. I love this movie. I love this movie both as an atheist and both as a former religious person.
Yeah, not to compare these two films because in tone, whoa, are they different.
Yeah.
It's a similar type of journey to Martyrs.
Yeah, I can see that.
You know,
I can totally see that.
Martyrs is way darker.
It's way darker, it's way more fucked up, way more bleak, and has a far bleaker ending. Though the last shot of this is actually a hilarious punchline.
Yes.
At the beginning of the movie, the character who survives mentions that if she were to die, she would want to reincarnate as a butterfly and show up on her friend's finger to let her know that it's her.
Yeah.
And so at the end of this movie, the main character, after escaping from the house and figuring out a way out, a butterfly lands on her finger. And this is after her friend died. And you're like, oh shit, is that her friend? Is the movie saying that the religion is true and that it's all real? And then it just cuts and the butterfly's gone. She hallucinated the butterfly.
Yeah, she hallucinated the butterfly.
Credits.
It's all happening in the mind.
Credits.
It's the mind.
That was a hilarious punchline, actually.
Yes, I thought that was great.
I loved it. Perfect. Wouldn't change a frame.
Yeah. It is that whole, like, no, faith is in the mind, man.
Yeah.
You know, like, is it real? No. Not in the way that the floor is real or the air is real or the stars are real. It exists in the mind.
Yep.
It's real in the mind, and that's where it belongs.
Yup.
You know?
I do want to highlight my favorite shot of this movie.
Oh, go for it.
Because there's a lot of really cool, subtle cinematography in this movie. A great example of one being that shot when she's turning the candle and revealing that there is no blueberry pie.
Yeah.
It's a blueberry candle.
Yeah.
That shot where it's just following the candle as it turns.
Yeah.
Great shot. But that's not the shot I want to highlight. The shot I want to highlight is there is a shot in which she is going up this ladder and the camera is pulling up from her. And it pulls up from her to reveal her crawling in the model of his house that he was playing with earlier in the movie. And then pulls up from that model as she's running down the hallway and bursts through the door. And as it pans up, the door in the fucking model room opens.
Yeah.
And she runs into the room. Perfect shot.
Look, I know that was CG, but that was flawless.
In a single one take shot, which is probably 3 shots stitched together, they managed to convey how much of a maze this house is and how much he is manipulating the situation with zero dialogue.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that elevates it beyond just being like a stage play like scenario.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's A24 film. Gotta be real arty.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
It's gotta be arty, man.
Reminds me a little bit of Hereditary. Hereditary did the dollhouse thing.
Yeah, it did the dollhouse. This, I think, was an improvement on the dollhouse.
It took it to the next level with this shot. 100%. And so with that said, my fellow Gorehounds, Heretic is a phenomenal movie and I highly recommend you go check it out. And with that said, my fellow Gorehounds, where can they find you, Count Jackula?
Well, fellow heretics, you can find me here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, most weekday evenings, where I would love to talk to you about all kinds of cool things like horror movies, movie symbolism, mythology, the nature of faith. That's a big deal with me, you know, because I'm endlessly curious about the things that are part of the human experience that aren't technically part of reality. These are things I like.
Yep. Y'all know me. I'm the Horror Guru. You can find me at Blue Sky, on Instagram, on Threads, on Facebook, anywhere but Twitter. Look me up. And with that said, my fellow Gorehounds, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to ring that notification bell so that you're notified of my videos immediately upon their upload. And if you'd like to help out either of us more directly, be sure to check out our Patreon pages. And remember, if you decide to go the Patreon route, even $1 a month can go a long way. And if you made it this far into the video, then I want you to comment below. And be sure to comment below using the hashtag Bob Ross Edition. That way I know. That way Jack knows. That way the whole world knows that you are the quirky regional spin-off of whatever iteration you are a copy of.